the spores of bacteria, fungi and certain lower plants, and the seeds in higher plants, they usually become dormant when unfavorable conditions. So conformers, they are not capable of regulating their body temperature. So dormancy is a state, the complete metabolic activity of the seed will become stopped or inactive. So animals, they actually adapt themselves in different forms in order to escape these adverse climatic conditions. Hello everyone, a warm welcome to another session on chapter 13 of 2nd PUC, that is Organisms and Population. I'm Dr. Divya, Biology faculty, Vidhyaashram Pre-University College, Mysuru, Temple of Excellence. So in the previous session of this chapter, we had discussed about various abiotic factors that actually decides the biome and the habitat of an organism living in that particular area, wherein we discussed about the abiotic factors such as temperature, water, light and soil. In today's session, we shall see how the organisms respond to these various abiotic factors. So to begin with, we shall see the responses of the organisms to different abiotic factors, be it the temperature, the light, the water and the soil. So we all know that organisms, they tend to maintain their internal body temperature in spite of whatever the external body temperature is. And this particular process is called as homeostasis. The best example that I can take of is we human beings. So we human beings, we come under the homeostasis group. That is, we are homeostatic because whatever the external temperature is. So, say for example, in summers, if the temperature is about 40 degrees Celsius, will our internal body temperature become 40 degrees Celsius? No, right? It will always be maintained at 37 degree. And likewise, if the winters are very, very cold, will our internal body temperature be less than 25 or 18 degrees Celsius? No, it will always be 37 degree Celsius. So that is how our body temperature, whatever the external environmental condition is, our body temperature remains the same and it is called as homeostasis. But animals are not capable of doing so. So they are not capable of regulating their body temperature. So what do these animals do? Say for example, if we feel too much of cold, what we'll do? Our body temperature will be same, but we are not able to survive the cold or tolerate that particular cold. So what we do during that time, we either switch on to the heaters that are there in the house or put up warm clothings, that is sweaters and all that, right? Can the animals do that? It is not possible. Or during the summer season, when the temperature is quite hot, we can put on the fan or AC inside the house, and if we are traveling, we can put on the AC inside the car. But can the animals do that? They cannot, right? So animals, they actually adapt themselves in different forms in order to escape these adverse climatic conditions. So how do they adapt themselves? We shall study about that in different forms such as conformers, then regulators and partial regulators. So regulators will usually have a homeostatic condition, that is, we human beings, we can be called as the regulators. We are capable of regulating a body temperature in spite of whatever the external environmental condition is. Our body temperature will remain the same. If it is 37 degree, it will remain 37 degree in spite of whatever the external temperature is. So we are regulators. So such organisms. So the organisms can be divided into based on their internal temperature and their external temperature. So here, this particular thing, how organisms adapt themselves or respond to environmental conditions, it is being depicted in the form of a graph wherein on the x-axis, there is presence of external temperature and the internal level. So external temperature, how much it is, and internal temperature, how much it is. So that they have marked in, that is x versus y, they have marked as external level and internal level. Now if you see the temperature, say for example here the internal temperature in the body is constant with that of the external temperature. So whatever the temperature might be, it is constant. It will not change at all. Say for example, if internal temperature is around 37 degrees Celsius, then throughout whatever the temperature might be, the external level of temperature might be, it will not get altered. It is always on a constant. So we are the regulators. So next is the conformers. So conformers, they are not capable of regulating their body temperature. So these conformers, as and when the temperature moves, so they have given it in a dark green color graphical representation. So as you can see, as the temperature, so external level temperature, so this is, say for example 0, then 20, 25, so like that. As the temperature increases, internal temperature also tends to increase as the temperature increases. So you can see here how they are increasing at each. So as the external level increases, the internal body temperature also tends to increase. So maybe this is 20, then here 30, 50. So any number if we take. So as the temperature rises 50, then here also the internal body temperature will also rise according to that. So it keeps on rising. So they are conformers. So what might happen if their internal body temperature keeps rising? It will become detrimental to that particular organism, right? So that is the time when organism adapts itself. Or let us say, what happens if it is a freezing condition? So in the deserts, we know that deserts are quite hot during the daytime and they have freezing temperatures during the night time. So as soon in the night time, what happens? As soon as the morning sunlight hit the desert floor, these lizards, that is the spiny lizards which live in the deserts, they come out of their burrows and they bask in the sun for few minutes until that body temperature is regulated. Now, can they remain in the sun throughout? No. Why? Because again, as the temperature in the desert is rising in the morning, the lizard will also tend to rise. So how do they maintain? So then what happens in the mid-summers and all that, that is somewhere middle during the noon time when the temperatures are very high at peak, they will go back to their burrows or they will go to a shady place. So like that, they move from places to places depending on the temperature. Next, partial regulators. So partial regulators are the ones whose body temperature increases to a certain level and then it will become constant. Beyond that, it will not increase. So those are partial regulators. So in this particular session, we will discuss in detail about conformers and regulators. So we shall discuss about them. So we'll talk about the regulate. So how do organisms regulate their body temperature? So what are regulators? Those organisms which can maintain a constant body temperature in spite of whatever the external temperature is, they are called as the regulators. So some organisms are able to maintain homeostasis. So homeostasis, they are able to maintain a constant body temperature as well as the constant osmotic concentration. So constant body temperature, I gave you the example of human beings. Osmotic concentration is something related to the organism in water, right? So here what happens, some organisms may be able to live by maintaining a constant osmotic balance in whatever type of water you put them. That is, be it for fresh water, be it sea water, whatever, or marine water, whatever, they'll be able to maintain that is osmotic concentration. So such organisms are called as homeostasis, that is, they're capable of maintaining their body temperature as well as the osmotic concentration, whatever the external temperature or the osmotic concentration might be. So here all birds and all mammals, and also there are some lower vertebrates and some invertebrate species that are capable of homeostasis, that is, that are capable of both maintaining a constant body temperature and maintaining a constant osmotic concentration. That is, they are called as thermoregulation and osmoregulation. Means they are able to regulate whatever the external temperature might be, the internal temperature also will remain constant. It will not change according to the external temperature. So it is called as thermoregulation, and osmoregulation is also one more term. Evolutionary biologists usually believe that the success of mammals is largely because of their ability to maintain a constant body temperature. So mammals usually are more capable of surviving when compared to other organisms. It is because the scientists believe that mammals are the ones which are capable of regulating their body temperature in such a way that they are able to maintain a constant body temperature in spite of whatever the external body temperature is. Even if they live in the Antarctica or in the Sahara Desert, the body temperature will not at all vary. So if we go to Antarctica, do you think our blood will freeze? What might happen if a person's blood freezes? He will die, because blood is the one that actually carries the oxygen from the lungs to the heart and then to different parts of the body, right? So here, if blood gets freeze, the person will die. But do everyone visiting Antarctica, do they die? No, right? That is because even if it is sub-zero level temperature in the Antarctica region, in spite of that, our body temperature will be maintained at 37 degree. But what we do is we are capable of keeping ourselves warm, right? So that is how we maintain. And even in Sahara Desert, so scorching temperature more than 50 degrees centigrade, do our body temperature also increase if you go to the Sahara Desert? No. It's not possible. So that is why these are called as the regulators. They are capable of homeostasis. So there are some examples which we can take of. So we, the human beings, we are capable of maintaining a constant body temperature of 37 degree centigrade. So in summer, when the outside temperature is more than our body temperature, we sweat, right? So how can we regulate our body temperature? We sweat. So that is why in summers we sweat a lot to cool our body. So when water surface or water droplets get formed on the surface of a skin, and when they try to evaporate, they will make our body cool. So that is how our temperature gets maintained at 37 degrees Celsius itself even during the summers. And the resultant, that whatever water is evaporating, cooling will occur. It is just like that of a cooler that we have at home. So for a cooler to work and give us cold air, we add ice cubes and we add water, right? So that water, the more colder the water, the more the room becomes cooler. Just like that, when our body is sweating a lot, more amount of cooling will be given to our body temperature. So that is one of the example. And next is winter. In winter also, our body temperature will never be, that is when the temperature is less than, the external temperature is too much less than the 37 degrees centigrade. Do you think that there is a sub-zero temperature? Will our body temperature also become sub-zero? No, it will be maintained somewhere 37 degrees, 35, 36 degrees, somewhere in between. How does this get maintained? So it is because in winters we tend to shiver. So when we shiver, it is like a exercise process. Because we know that when we exercise, we sweat a lot, right? Why do we sweat a lot? Again, when during exercising, a lot of heat is generated. To maintain a body heat or temperature, we sweat a lot. Just like that, this is also kind of an exercise, that is shivering. So when we shiver, what happens? The body temperature gets regulated. So shiver is a kind of exercise which produces heat, and therefore it will rise the body temperature, sustaining that particular organism. These are the different ways how we human beings can regulate our body temperature. So next, talking about conformers. So those animals which are not capable of maintaining a constant body temperature are called as the conformers. They cannot regulate their body temperature. So majority of the animals and all the plants, they cannot maintain a constant internal environment. So their body temperature changes according to they change with that of the external environmental temperature. So ambient temperature is nothing but the temperature that is there surrounding them. So they tend to change. That is, in winter, the body temperature will also come down. So in summer, the body temperature will go up. So that is why some birds, you can find them dipping into the water and all that during the summer season. It is because of that particular reason. And also talking about osmotic concentration. So in aquatic animals, the osmotic concentration of the body fluid changes with that of the ambient air as well as the water osmotic concentration. In the previous session, wherein we had understood that a freshwater fish, you cannot take it and put it in a salty water, right? It will not be able to maintain a proper concentration gradient. Or what might happen, in order to maintain a concentration gradient, from the body of the fish, the water molecules will move out into the sea. That is the external media, that is the sea. So if the body of the fish loses water, how can a freshwater fish survive? But the marine fishes are adapted to survive in the marine environment or the salt waters or the seas or the oceans, wherein they try to regulate the osmotic potential. But not all animals can do so. So these animals and plants which are not capable of regulating the temperature nor the osmotic concentration are called as the conformers. So this also we shall study by taking some examples. So here they have used a word called thermoregulation. So thermoregulation means regulating the heat or the temperature. So thermoregulation is a energetically expensive process. If we need to regulate our body temperature, a lot of energy needs to be released. But here what happens, say for example, there are some birds or mammals which are very, very tiny. They are not capable of regulating their body temperature. And imagine if they want to regulate their body temperature, first of all, they will be very tiny. That is the hummingbird. We have shrews, the shrews and the hummingbirds. So how will they maintain their body temperature? During the winters, or if the temperature is extremely cold, if they have to regulate their body temperature, a lot of energy is required. First of all, the body of that animal is quite small. In that small body, if 10% of their energy they lose it in order to generate the heat in their body to maintain the body temperature, to refill that 10%, they have to feed a lot. It takes a lot of time and effort for that, right? So that is why these animals are not found in the polar region. So what happens in smaller animals? So heat loss or heat gain is a function of the surface area. As I told you, larger animals, they can generate energy within a very short span of time. But smaller animals, they cannot generate the lost energy, they cannot replenish it back within a short span of time, and it requires a lot of effort, right? So that is why. Since small animals have larger surface area, don't think that when I say small animals have larger surface area, that surface area is large for that. For the hummingbird, its surface area is large. But actually, in that large surface area, which is that is relative to the volume, they tend to lose their body heat very, very fast. Whenever it is cold, from that small animal, a lot of body heat is released. To release that body heat, a lot of energy is needed. And to replenish that energy back, a lot of effort is needed. Or that is, it should undergo metabolism wherein a lot of energy will be released and that energy will be utilized for the maintaining the body temperature in the form of heat. So that is a quite laborious and a strenuous process to the organisms. So here what happens, that is the reason why we don't find smaller animals living in the Antarctic or the snow-laden region. Wherever is there, small animals are not there. This is the main reason. That is because they are very small and they continuously need to generate heat in order to maintain the body temperature, and during that process a lot of energy is being utilized, and to replenish that energy in order to continuously maintain the body heat, a lot of metabolic activity has to take place in them, which is not possible, which is quite tired for them. So that is why these small animals will not live in the snow-laden region. And this is the main reason why very small animals are rarely found in the polar regions or the snow-capped regions. So what can these animals do? Most of the birds are not capable of regulating their body temperature, hence they are conformers. So how do these birds survive? Birds, they have wings. So they can fly from one region to another for their survival, like how we people do. So in very hot summers, we can move to a hill station or Shimla or anywhere, so that we can enjoy the cool winters there or cool temperature there, right? So birds, how do they migrate? They are capable of flight. So they are capable of migrating. So the organisms, they move away, especially the birds, they move away temporarily from the stressful habitat. So the stressful habitat that I am talking here is of cold weather. Cold weather, extremely cold weather, to a more hospitable area. And when the stressfulness in that particular environment becomes normal, or say when summer is back, when summer is back, they return to their own original habitat. So that is about migration. So birds tend to migrate. So the examples that we have taken here is, as I told you, a person moving from Delhi to Shimla for the duration of summer. Likewise, many animals, especially the birds during the winter, they travel thousands of kilometers or long distances. It is called as long distance migrations to more hospitable areas where there is no cold. So one of the best example that we can take of is the Keolado National Park, which is situated in Bharatpur in Rajasthan. So every year in Siberia, whenever there is extreme snow falling winters, these birds from Siberia, they move into Rajasthan because there the temperature is good for these particular birds. So they migrate and they will stay there. And once in Siberia, the winter seasons are over, these birds again from Rajasthan, they will migrate back into their original habitat, that is Siberia. So there are various birds here, which you can see the flamingos, red-headed storks, then we have various pelicans. All these are the migratory birds which have come from Siberia. They live here until the winters are over in Siberia. So this is how these conformers, they are migrators. So especially the birds, they tend to migrate to a more favorable environmental condition. Next, talking about the another activity which the conformers do in order to adapt themselves to the changing temperature, that is they suspend. Suspend means becoming inactive. So here in bacteria, fungi and lower plants, there are various kinds of thick-walled spores. So we all know that, be it bacteria, fungi or any of the plants. So for example, these bacteria, they also produce spores which are having thick wall around them. Fungi, be it penicillium or aspergillus, different forms of fungi, they also produce thick walls of spores. And even the plants such as the pteridophytes, these also produce spores having thick wall. So if the spores are having thick walls, what happens is that will actually, so if this is a spore, there is this thick wall around them. Thick wall. So this thick wall will help the spore to survive the extreme environmental condition. And whenever the favorable conditions are back, they will start to enter into the next phase of their life cycle. So in bacteria, fungi and lower plants, various kinds of thick-walled spores are formed which help them to survive unfavorable conditions. And whenever a suitable environmental condition, a favorable condition is brought back, they will germinate. I can give off is these, there are certain fungal spores, especially I'll take the example of bacteria. So there are certain bacterial spores which are capable of moving on into the next cycle, germinating and moving on into the next cycle. And for that particular process, they need water. Or there are certain fungi also whose spores, if they have to enter into the next stage of their life cycle, they require water. So whenever there is a drought condition, around the spores, thick wall will start to develop, and these thick walls will protect the spores from further desiccating or losing water. And when the favorable conditions such as rainfall, availability of water occurs, the spores will germinate and it will enter into the next life cycle. And not just that, in higher plants, the seeds and some other vegetative reproductive structures of the higher plants, they also become inactive. That is, they become inactive over periods of stress. So during stress condition, especially the drought condition, or when the temperature is very, very high and the availability of water is extremely scarce, these that is seeds, they will not germinate. They will stay wherever they are. As such, they will become dormant, they will become inactive, and they will stay for months. And once the favorable condition is back, or once the availability of water is back, they will germinate and they will develop into a new seedling and a plant. So here, when the favorable conditions arise, they germinate to form new plants under the that is favorable moisture and temperature condition. So this particular process wherein the seed will completely reduce its metabolic activity, seed will completely become inactive and they will not germinate, they are called as dormancy. So dormancy is a state the complete metabolic activity of the seed will become stopped or inactive. So that is called as dormancy. So seeds, the spores of bacteria, fungi and certain lower plants, and the seeds in higher plants, they usually become dormant when unfavorable conditions are there, and whenever the favorable conditions returns, they will enter into the next stage of the life cycle. So this is about suspend, completely suspending the activity. So this was about this particular session wherein we studied about the organisms' responses towards the abiotic factors, especially temperature and water, wherein we understood based on that there are two types of organisms, regulators and conformers. So, and in conformers, there are those organisms which are capable of migrating and those organisms which are capable of suspending their activity. So, I hope you understood this session well. In the coming session, we shall discuss about the adaptations of various organisms to different abiotic factors. So, we'll better understand that taking examples. So, with examples, we shall learn how organisms adapt itself to various abiotic factors for their survival. So, we shall meet again in the coming session. Thank you.